First item on tonight's agenda, Elevage Developers Agreement.
Thank you, Steve. On November 28th, 2022, City Council approved the preliminary plat for Elevage EB Second Edition. As part of the development, an approved developer's agreement is required. Attachment 1 in your packet is a draft of the original agreement. The attorneys for the city and developers were working together through the weekend on the final draft. An updated draft was sent to council as an addendum this morning. An updated memo was also sent to council from Chris Nelson earlier today, which indicates the final edits appear to have been accepted by Elevage, with the essentially only exception being the warranty period and local bank matters still outstanding. Staff is requesting City Council to review, discuss, and provide comments to staff, the developer, and attorneys regarding the developer's agreement. Council comments will be addressed and a draft agreement will be added to the December 12th, 2022 City Council agenda as part of the approval of the final plat. Stephanie?
So again, Phase 2 developers agreement is nearly complete. The initial draft was made by the developer's attorney. It's been reviewed by city staff, the engineer, our city attorney, and all of whom has proposed additions and edits. The developer has agreed to almost all of the city's proposed changes. So a couple of the highlights that the developer objected to in the email to the city administrator are the following. First, the developer requests a 1-year warranty period for public improvements. Historically, the city's required a 2-year warranty period. The master PUD agreement does not address the required warranty period for public improvements, so the matter is for the council to determine. Developer appears to rely on the Phase 1 developer's agreement for this 1-year request, but again, there were virtually no public improvements in Phase 1, so securing any type of warranty was not a priority for the city at that time. The council will have to determine the length of the warranty period for the public improvements for Phase 2. And then second, the developer requests removal of the provision the city included stating the letter of credit the developer must provide must be from a financial institution within the 7-county metro area. The city administrator advised that prior to development was secured by the letter of credit. It was from a bank from South Dakota, in which we were having difficulty working with them. So that's where that came into play on why we were asking for it with the 7-county metro area. I think the developer's request is reasonable and should be accepted by the council. I don't see any reason why the financial institution must be within the 7-county area, so long as the terms the city would require of a letter of credit be satisfied. Importantly, the city retains the ability to say no to the proposed financial institution if choose so. So the memo that Chris put together, again, the developer's agreement, the memo relates to the developer's agreement and not the final plat for it. At its last meeting, council identified changes it needs to see for the final plat, including the delineation of the public dedications. Further improvements such as roads, water, sewer, and stormwater infrastructure, which the developer will dedicate to the public, are traditionally located within publicly dedicated right-of-ways. While that is in part the case for Phase 2, there are some private alleyways under which the developer will construct publicly dedicated water, sewer, and stormwater infrastructure. As part of the final approval of Phase 2, the city needs to receive easements over those alleyways to provide city staff, its agents, and contractors authority to access and improve and or repair any public dedicated infrastructure within those alleyways. Finally, based on council's preliminary plat discussion, the city attorney understands the entire council may not support the overall project. The developer's agreement, however, is not a statement on the project itself. Rather, the developer agreement adopts the development standards for the project and articulates the city's protections. For that reason, the city attorney recommends the council to support approval of the developer's agreement as amended at the December 12th city council meeting. And we can start looking at the agreement, and as you know, the developer's here as well.
So perhaps we start with these two issues that seem, from Chris's memo, seem to be not resolved. Start with those first, and then we can go through other comments. Does that make sense? Corey, why don't you go to the microphone? State your name and address.
Corey Burstad, 2571 Tournament Players Circle North, Lane, Minnesota 55449. Mr.
Okay.
Mayor, Council. So the first issue, kind of the big one, is more about the letter of credit for the 2-year period, how it's kind of laid out in the language. And I was talking with Jack too about this earlier today, is, you know, the public improvement portion is, you know, gonna be a like a subcontractor of ours is gonna do all of the site work and stuff. And so what I wanted to do was to say we'd do a performance bond and payment, you know, type bond on the project, which we would hold them accountable to and make the city a dual obligee. So it, you know, it gets everything done and protects us for that period. That'd be much more economical versus sitting in an irrevocable letter of credit for 2 years in today's market. I mean, it would be a massive amount of cost on this project that just quite honestly we just feel it's unreasonable. We'll do what traditionally, we just actually talked to Fran on our way here, which is one of our large contractors. They just did a project in Woodbury. Woodbury has same standards, the 2-year provision. He recommended immediately that you need to do a bond with your sub, and we just tie the city in with it and stuff. So to me, that was the big issue. All of a sudden, you got 2 years of letter of credit going on for beyond that time. You're going to be paying hundreds of thousands of dollars in carry costs just for something that we just feel like, a bond would take care of that.
So the discussion of the bond, is that something the attorneys have had that discussion, or is that something just came up today?
We put language of a bond as a possibility, but at first we were more stuck on the 1 year, the 1 year versus the 2. But I think throughout the day and kind of working, probably the best way to do it is to say, hey, okay, fine, we can agree to the 2 year, but then you allow us to at least do the performance bond payment instead, because if I got to do 125% of the project cost, and the way that Craig, described the project cost, which we believe that, it was looked at from a total project cost, the way he did his numbers quick, which is, again, I don't see any of his work product. I have no idea where that came from. That's a large number for me to sit here and say, oh yeah, I'll agree to that. It's just not where my head's at right now, so.
So we don't have, tonight, we don't have the benefit of the city attorney being here, so.
Right.
And we haven't had any discussion with Chris yet regarding the bond.
No, we have not.
This has come up in the past, have we used performance bonds with major contracts in the past?
We have never used, I won't say we've never used, but it's a rare occasion where we've used performance bonds. And the reason being, from the city standpoint, a letter of credit is much easier to use than a performance bond.
Yeah.
They both provide protection, but from our standpoint, if you had to collect or draw down on it, it's much easier to use the LOC than it is a performance bond. That's really the only difference that I see.
I through my career, had this discussion so many times with contractors, between bonds and letters of credit, so I understand.
Yeah, in the previous version, Mike, our attorney, just pointed out to me that Chris did have a performance maintenance bond in one of the earlier versions of our documents. So,
Okay.
I mean, it was in there. I think we got, as we went through the red lines, we kind of got out in front just discussing, really the 1 year that we originally agreed to in the base, master PUD agreement, developer agreement. And so we kind of got zeroed in on that, because if we didn't agree on that and how that was going to go, then all of a sudden, but I think throughout like I said, throughout the day to day, I think we felt like, okay, there's a way to get an equal balance for both parties that doesn't, one doesn't break the bank on the project, but also two, gives the city the protection that they need. So
that's something, obviously hasn't been discussed, but it's something you're willing to do as a 2-year performance bond?
yes.
Mayor Voss,
Yes.
it actually is in the draft agreement. If you go to page 12, 7.6 warranty, Chris has addressed it in here. So they're saying that it's acceptable to the city, a maintenance bond or a cash deposit. At the end of the paragraph, 7.6. So it has been addressed.
And like I said today, we just literally an hour ago got off a phone call with the president of Frana that's doing a project for us right now. Like I said, he just did a townhouse development in the city of Woodbury. and they did the same exact thing. So we just thought, you know, understanding how that would work for us, we'd make our, you know, our major contractor below carry that performance bond and then list the city as well. Second line.
I don't see a performance bond there, though.
They call it a maintenance bond.
Maintenance bond, same.
Okay.
We
So-
could change the word to say performance and,
Mhm.
you know.
So,
This is the way that Chris, city attorney, put it together is as a maintenance bond.
so explain where we sit right now. I'm confused.
Where we,
You want,
If we choose, as long as, you know, the understanding is that we could do, the issue was really more about the warranty period. If we weren't gonna agree to the warranty period, then it comes down to, but if we agree, okay, we'll agree to the warranty period, will you agree to the maintenance? Yeah, performance and maintenance bond. So,
what's staff's recommendation?
at this time, city attorney and city staff recommends, just how it's written in 7.6, that it is a 1-year, 1-year warranty, and they can do the maintenance bond.
And so discussions you've had today have just been internal, you're talking about? this change?
I mean, we've gone kind of back and forth on what the two, like, you know, like he just said, what the two outstanding things that we should probably discuss tonight. We typically have never discussed a developer agreement in a setting like this, so.
And neither have
usually-
we, so
Yeah,
this is
so
different.
typically we do it with city staff behind closed doors and discuss it. So I think probably what's in front of us with the council is, are they fine with, you know, us purporting, you know, we, as a developer, would be okay with the 2-year warranty if you allow us to do, you know, the performance bond. If you say I've got to do a irrevocable letter of credit on top of it, I might have issue going to the 2-year mark, because now it's just a really high extreme cost. It's just two different mechanisms to get to where we need to get to, so.
Okay, so what language are we discussing then?
If Corey were comfortable with the 2-year warranty with the performance bond, then I think that would be what we're talking about.
Well, I understand that, but what I'm not getting is staff okay with that?
Yes, so, staff is okay with that, and then also, Chris, the city attorney, recommends that he supports it the way that it's written in the developer's agreement with the performance bond, and he was actually supported the 1-year, rather than the 2-year as well.
So he
Two-year-
was,
one-year warranty period.
agreeing with our original
Yes.
intent, but said it's up to you because your
Yeah.
city code is 2 years. So he was saying that you, the council, would have to decide whether or not you supported that, going to
Okay.
a 1-year.
So on our code states we have to do 2-year,
Correct.
so we'd have to do a variance to that?
Well, we'd probably have to we'd have to amend the city code, but since this is a PUD, then there can be exceptions to that.
Okay. Other thoughts on this?
I think the performance bond for 2 years is probably adequate. That's my opinion.
It's always definitely preferred by contractors, it always is, because it's less
Oh,
costly.
yeah.
But it is harder to
It's
cash in
understandable.
too, it takes some work to do, but I've only had to do it once.
Given the rest of our investment into this project.
Well, besides,
Roads
it'll
will get-
free up money for you to update your traffic studies, so.
Yes, exactly.
Which I'm about to ask you
Yeah.
for real soon.
Yeah.
Not that I'm serving my own interests.
So, it seems like we're okay with the 2-year, I'm not hearing any objection to it, so. So can I make a request, so we're clear right now? When this comes back to council for approval, can we get a red line version of any changes that are made to this document going forward? So,
Yes.
so we know what the changes are, so we don't have to review the whole thing. Okay, good. Second item was the location of the bank within the Sutton County area.
Just for me, considering where I'm at today in this process, I would tell you like, it'll probably be in the Seven County metro. But I'm just telling you, I definitely in today's current market do not want to be limited whatsoever to that.
Well,
Just
what that-
because my reach of what I can do financing wise is much larger than the Seven County metro, and I, you know, until I go and do my actual, that side of the financing of it, which you can't even begin until after this part of the phase. I understand your concern, but I guess I don't wanna sit here today and all of a sudden I agree to that, next thing you know, I'm just outside of it, next thing you know, I can't do anything because of it, so. It's just very limiting, that we're a much larger world than the Seven County metro in terms of, you know,
Well,
what my options are.
we instituted that because years ago, we had issues where we had to cash in I think it was more than a few times, a letter of credit and having to go to the
Yeah.
bank, you know, the city administrator having to go to the bank to do that, it was a hassle.
Now, the bank financing that I'm currently with in the property, and as we started the pre-development phases of it, is Village Bank across the street, so I'm not too concerned. But to say today that that's where I'll be when it comes to the
Right.
actual, that project is much larger than Village Bank. So it's a different, you know, entity that would be used for that. So that's why I just don't wanna sit here today and pigeonhole myself.
No, you're correct, Steve. There were some issues in the past, but that was 10 or 12 years ago before we got DocuSign and all these other electronic means to do document signing virtually. And it probably doesn't make any sense to keep following that policy anymore.
So is it policy or is it code?
It's policy.
Okay, so that's something easily we can change.
Correct.
So,
How would you put it if it is a bank of that we have to accept the bank as someone we can work with? How would that be?
We,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, so we're not tied up either.
No.
Right. Well, a great bank, great rates, but boy,
Yeah.
they're awful to
Yeah,
work with.
yes, yeah. And hopefully it's all just a moot point.
Yeah,
It won't
yeah,
ever be.
probably is.
Yeah, yes.
so any concerns on that? No, not restricting, okay, good. Got that done. Other comments, questions?
Would you be willing to agree to updating your traffic impact analysis with the same people? I don't need all the little diagrams, but
I would
Just
tell
a
you that,
professional
I would
engineer's
tell you that
opinion.
when we do Outlot A, which has been, you know, updated in the, you'll see it, it's been all updated with street and everything else, and that when we go to the commercial phase of it, there will be one, there absolutely will
Yeah,
be one
we'll
done.
see
It'll
what's
have to
on it.
take place, is what I'll tell you. So you will see one when we get to the next, because part of our master PUD is we have to come back in again and plat
Right,
that
right.
lot. And so at that time, there'll be updated traffic studies that'll go along with it. Whoever would come in there and working with us, we would have to have one.
can I
It
ask
would-
you a question?
Yep.
Been looking at a lot of because I'm a new person here, so I'm trying to get up to speed. I've been looking at a lot of old videos, like from last year, March and April and all that. Phase one was originally supposed to be a gas station and daycare. Was originally concept. Yeah.
The plating was, but only
Right, right.
one portion of it was set at that moment because the city road.
And did phase one kind of end with the sale of that property to Quick Trip? Is that? how
Still with the outlot, still there technically in phase one, it's still there, so that still is to take
Okay.
place, yes.
All right,
And kind of the part of it we were waiting for is as Quick Trip starts, they're moving a lot of their dirt and surcharge off as part of our agreement onto that site
okay.
as part of that phase. And then we'll come back in, hopefully plat that and show you those plans. And then at the same time, hopefully we're kickstarting all this. What happened was the road got started. Originally, we were only gonna do half of the road when we were kind of in the middle of this negotiation, talking and contributing the land. And then the road was only gonna go, only so far to there. And then it decided that they were gonna go further along. Well, because of that, everything got just kind of slightly delayed. It was all a good thing. It just meant that everything got kind of punted because
Right.
Quick Trip in their agreement said, we are not closing until they're done. And so then that didn't take place until October, November finish. And then, then Quick Trip could kick their PA out further. And so everything just kind of got pushed. And obviously because of COVID too, all their schedules got pushed. So, but now we're just kind of picking up where we really kind of left off. But during that time, again, we updated all of our market studies and everything else along the way. And basically have determined that, our original plan and today, which is, we're making the right decision even more so, that 40 single individual home lots is probably not the best fit for this site.
No, I
today.
mean, I actually
Long-term.
understand
Yeah,
that completely,
yeah.
yeah.
Yep, so,
And my concern is with the amount of traffic pouring out to the limited access, ingress, egress available on 65. And I seem to be in a big crowd of one, apparently. So, I'll try to relent as hard as
when
it
you
is.
see the
Frank.
new, when you see the, and just the one thing you have to remember is that traffic study was done with the idea that the grocery and the other facility were in as well.
Yeah,
So, this would be actually, believe it or not, nominal. I know some people laugh at that, but when the traffic study gets done, we've done enough of these to know that we feel very confident and know and what our numbers are. So, like I said, the study was done with a much larger look at the whole time.
Well, and
at
the other
time.
thing that'll come out of that traffic study is the fact you'll have actual data.
Yeah,
That they'll
absolutely.
collect, depending
sure.
if this is built.
And plus the reduced conflict interchanges and stuff that were put in while this was all kind of,
yeah.
everything
this all was kind of happening at the same time. So MinDOT will even have updated information too, as to how that's actually working or not working, for that matter. So, and there's been more development across the highway too. All these things that impact, but when we do the commercial phase, you'll see that updated at that point. You'll be able to,
Well-
as we go through the initial stages, we can have those
Well, I think
discussions.
when you do come in with commercial too, depending on the timing, MinDOT's gonna be doing the upgrades to Highway 65, and is it still 2024?
2024, correct. That would be the perfect time to do that.
So that'd be good timing there. I mean, I think everything they're planning is pretty much just overlay and correction and nothing new as far as I know. But,
Correct.
but that might be good timing too, so.
Sure.
I feel like I've done my due diligence as far as bringing it up as a concern of mine, but I'm aware that this is a bigger thing than just that. And I don't want to be the stumbling block over it. I want to be mindful of it, that's all.
No, I certainly understand and respect that.
Like I said last time we were together, I'm not, out to sabotage or anything. I'm basically pro-development, but I just like to consider everything involved. And better than I do that there's a lot of different things involved, so.
Well, and probably my, little frustration maybe with it was just more like we've been working on this for multiple years
Oh, yeah.
on it leading up to it. So we had spent a lot of time and money and effort to make sure that we kind of had this figured out. And even
Yeah.
for us to kind of pivot in the project, most people at that point sometimes would just walk and say they're not going to do it. Well, I've never not finished a project I've started, ever. And so, we pivoted because we felt like the market was changing so dramatically, so quickly that we needed to make sure that we didn't miss the mark on this one.
Yeah.
So,
Well, you've got a big vested interest in seeing it succeed, so we do appreciate that, do understand it.
thank you.
I've got a few questions. 5.6 is parking. And we talked a little bit last time about the fact we have a conflict between this agreement and our ordinance. And did we look any further? Did we decide we had to change our ordinance as well?
Yes.
So we're gonna do that concurrently with this, or?
It will be done. We'll bring that up. We can go ahead and advertise for the public hearing, and we can get that done in January.
Okay,
It'll have to be done at the planning commission
right.
because
Okay.
it's zoning.
So, tell us again how 'Cause I just see the potential for conflict, particularly since we've never had this issue in our city or any cities around here, is the snow emergency and how those streets are gonna be cleared of cars if, you know, we come in to plow, we can't plow. I mean, what happens then? It's gonna happen, there's no doubt.
It happens, yeah.
Have we thought about how we're gonna deal with that? Is that something that the developer's gonna have to get those cars towed?
We'll probably have to work with the city
Yeah.
in conjunction, to see how that would take place, but our management company obviously managing the whole site too as well, you know, with notification, communication to the residents. But yeah, I mean, eventually, you're towing cars.
Well, and
So-
who's towing, and who has the authority to tow them and everything else, cause these are city streets, they're not private, you know?
Well, depending on how we revise the ordinance will determine on who tows. If it's written in a certain manner, then the city
I
has
heard
the
you guys have
right
a
to.
great lot. You needed some new trucks for a plow, no, sorry.
Nope.
So it just depends on how we address this in the ordinance change.
Okay. I know we're not in Minneapolis, St. Paul, but I
Yeah.
know it, particularly
And,
for
you know,
snow, they're
just-
towing hundreds and hundreds of cars. and-
Just as a refresher, of course, this will probably be maybe potentially more cars, but generally when we do it now, we just plow around the car and it's plowed in, so.
Right. And then we have to come back and clean the street out, you know,
Yeah, when the car's pulled out or
when the
dug
cars
out.
are pulled
yeah.
out, so,
But generally though, on a
Yeah.
big snowfall though, it doesn't takes more than one day to totally
Yeah.
clean it up, so.
I
It's
can-
not like we-
maybe it's not a huge issue, it's just something that's new.
I don't think it'll be as big of an issue. There's a lot of alleyway, there's a lot of, you know, in front of the garage door spaces and stuff for people too, so.
Well, your,
Um,
your garages, are they two stall?
Yeah, most all of them are, and in fact, we have a meeting tomorrow morning discussing some of them, you know, like depths and width tomorrow a little bit, with our
And-
own team.
And would the driveways be able to hold 2 cars each?
Yeah, I mean, realistically, there's probably enough room for 2 cars. How people park, there, you know, but in theory, yes, yeah. So we feel pretty good about the site, but I mean, will it happen? Of course it will, you know, so,
But there is parking
yes.
in the buildings.
Yeah, to be honest with
for-
you, we would.
not
we would
all
prefer-
parking-
We would prefer everyone park inside of there. Part of the reason why I'm building the garage depths even, you know, I've looked at because, you know, I wanted to make sure a truck could fit in the garage. You know, a lot of
Yep.
these developments are made and they're 2 feet too short
Yeah.
and they can't
Yeah,
even
the
park in there. And so then
20
everything starts
foot-
coming out of the garages
Yeah.
out front.
20-foot
so-
garage stall.
Yeah, they're actually 21, 22 foot right now as our baseline. So
Yeah.
we're really looking at that hard
So,
right now.
but needless to say, all parking will not be on the streets. That
No, we don't
there
want it
is
to be at all, to be honest with
Parking
you. It's
in
really meant for,
garages
you know,
and
visitors.
driveways.
Yeah,
Okay.
Okay, and it'll obviously all be signed.
yes, yeah, that's in the agreement.
And sidewalks, I think we talked about this too. Again,
We'll have a maintenance agreement with the city and stuff that we're drafting right now, so.
and
that's
so
all
the
I'm-
residents won't have to do their own sidewalk clearing, your contractor will do the sidewalk
Yeah,
clearing.
so we'll take care of that, I think the alleyways and this, and the sidewalks, and then also we have a maintenance agreement as well that goes along with that,
Okay,
so, yeah.
okay. Are you gonna have a sign for the development?
You know, we haven't got that far yet in terms of, if we would, I would imagine we'd have something
A
on that
per-
front.
Let me ask it, a permanent sign?
Yeah, I think we would have something most likely on the front side of where the clubhouse is,
Okay,
So,
okay.
depending on how we end up.
Not at Sand Hill Parkway, as opposed, you're gonna have a sign for your development closer to your development.
Yeah, I mean, again, because of the commercial, you know, out front, my guess is it would be up in that front lawn, come up into that area
Ah, okay.
possibly.
Okay,
Yeah, just not entirely sure yet with where the best spot. Sometimes you need to move the dirt, move everything around and figure out exactly where is the best spot to put it yet, so.
okay,
But, I do believe that we will absolutely have something that out there that would.
okay. I was
you know,
just curious,
easy way
I
to
didn't,
find, yeah.
I didn't see that on the plat.
Yeah.
So, this is new to us, a townhome idea. Are these individual lots? how is this done? I mean, cause we're gonna have utilities and
They're
we're
done
gonna
as a
bill
block
each
with, you know,
home, are they, for the county and taxes, are they individual lots or is it?
by block. So, by block.
By
not
block,
Not by
okay.
individual unit. So
Okay.
it can be, but I'd have to come back and I'd have to replat it.
So
Well,
you,
I'm just,
Yeah.
I was just more
Yeah.
just asking, this, from the idea of the utility billings, is where I'm going with this. So we're gonna bill each unit separately?
Yes.
That's
Yes.
correct.
And that's our responsibility?
That's correct.
Okay.
so you won't have zero lot lines or anything going between each?
No, not today. No.
So each unit is not its own lot.
Yeah, so like this, you know, one area is a block, you know.
Okay. So then, and I'm just thinking long range, I know these are all rental, but if you ever, decide to start selling these, you're obviously not gonna be able to sell them by unit, you're gonna have to sell it by block then.
CIC plat over the top of this plat, and then there would be a declaration and an association that's created over the top of it.
So it'd basically be a replat.
I couldn't just start selling one off.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I'm
Yeah,
asking
no,
if that ever
No,
happened.
that's, no,
Okay,
it wouldn't be able
okay.
to do that at all.
All right.
There's no lender that would do that.
My questions are more towards the plat itself. On the trails are on the preliminary plat. Is there an easement that goes with that?
There will be, yes. I had talked to them.
How wide is the easement? Is it wider than the trail itself?
Yes, it is.
Oh,
And I can't remember what we had talked about for the easement width. We had talked to Nate about that already. I don't remember what it was. But we will have a document and it has to be, and it'll be filed with the county
Okay,
along with the plat.
That's where I'm getting, because
Yes.
5.4 has got the dedication of all the public improvements, but it doesn't talk about the trails or trail
Yep.
easements.
Trail easements will be a separate document.
I do think if you look at the definition of public improvements, the trail is part of the public improvement. So we will certainly do a trail easement, but, it is part of the definition.
I assumed that, but
Yeah.
because it wasn't called out like the other things were called out, I was just curious about that, so, okay, that answers my question then. Back to the original units, this is a city staff question. Our whole rental inspection policy that we have, does that, would that apply for this?
Yes.
Yes, it will.
But it doesn't apply for, didn't apply for the apartment buildings though?
It does. Mhm.
Oh, so
Oh, yeah.
we do rentals, okay.
Yes.
Does that need to be in here at all?
No, that's by ordinance.
Okay. 'Cause that's a lot of rental inspections now, so I'm questioning staff ability to do
Well,
200
So-
rentals.
so
We'll
so-
actually address that when we talk about staffing issues with the fire department.
Oh, okay.
Like typically in the city of Shoreview, where our Wonder Development is right now, once they've kind of inspected it, they really don't come back and do it. They usually rely on the management company and work with them, and they're not going into each unit and doing inspections like that. Just, you know, they do an annual license and go through that, so.
Do they do it on turnover?
No, I don't even believe they do that. They work with the management company because again, you know, professional management company, they usually work directly with them, so.
Okay,
All I know is I sign off on the agreements every year and it gets handed out on a stack of documents. So I don't have to like really rely on the city, making sure they go in and check on each tenant, so.
and then in terms of the utilities, I think it was 6.2. It's not called out there, well, it sort of is, the fiber optic, but broadband access, I assume you're gonna bring in some high speed into these units.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering if we should mention it or somehow have a policy that, do we have a policy yet that all new developments have to be served?
No, but they all have been,
Yeah,
so.
we're relying on
yeah,
the market. so-
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I can't imagine you wouldn't do that there, so.
It would be very hard to have a renter if you didn't have good internet to that
Yeah,
house.
yeah. And then the last question I have is, it's something I brought up a while back too, is, in considering everything that's going on, in your design of your units, have you put any thought into whether the unit can be easily adapted for EV charging station within the garage area?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that we actually contemplate in every single development nowadays. There's a balance. There's usually like a number within it. Usually what we allow it to do, we set it up so that the tenant can upgrade, you know, say their car, they can upgrade
Mhm.
with their system. It's not necessarily that we are always doing it, but we also usually like if someone's requesting they're moving and signing the lease and they say, hey, we provide the service to be able to put it in for them, because you know, it's tenant by tenant, obviously. But it's contemplated in every single thing. Like right now, we have garage stalls right now of 270 underground. We're doing in Vadnais Heights, and I think 180 of them are all going to have it. You know, so it's a big deal right now. It's just making sure you have the infrastructure to handle it.
Yeah.
You know, more than anything else.
I meant.
To be honest with you, you probably can't even actually get the product to actually upgrade to an EV right now. The supply chains are so messed up, but you have to contemplate that everyone's hooking up to it.
Well, it's more, to me, it's more of the ability to do it, you know, so.
The
So the power
power,
box isn't on the opposite side of the house is where
Oh,
the garage
the-
is, things like that, you
the
know?
power company recommends at least running an empty conduit.
Yes.
That's what I'm thinking,
And because there's so many different kinds of chargers and how much power for,
There's a
That's
lot of new
required,
energy codes that are coming
and-
out right now that we examine before we go to construction documents too, that, you know,
Yeah.
there's a lot of incentive out there for us to do it as developers right
Yeah.
now, so.
yep.
What are the
So-
basic specs on those things? Is it 110 volt? What kind of amperage?
I
You
can't,
have any idea?
Each vehicle company,
Every
et cetera,
all
is
different?
different.
Okay.
That's why the power company
Yeah.
recommends just running an empty conduit, then you can supply whatever is needed in the future.
I see.
I would think that's a marketing feature too, to say they're, you know, not that they're there, but they're adaptable for it, you
Yeah.
know?
Compatible?
Something like that, yeah. Although you'll scare off people like me, I'll be long gone
I
before I
was
have an
gonna
EV charger in
comment,
my
I was
house.
gonna comment, have you converted some of your older vehicles, Mr. Mayor?
Internal combustion,
Yeah.
live forever, so. That's the extent of my questions I had on it. Anyone else? So then, I think how we left it, and it's just that one aspect with the performance bond, and working out that language, and then show that to us the next council meeting, and
We'll give that to Chris and let him incorporate that in the document and have that redlined.
thank you.
And it'll be on the agenda for the December 12th meeting.
Anything else on this? All right. Corey, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
One more
Council,
meeting?
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
This
Going
one,
down?
one more meeting. It is next week. All right, fire department staffing report.
Thank you, Steve. The fire department is requesting that city council evaluate the need for the addition of a full-time position for a
Thanks, Stephanie.
training officer, community outreach coordinator. This position, if approved, could commence as early as July 1st, 2023, or the beginning of fiscal year 2024. The need for this type of position was formally assessed in 2019 as a shared duty crew services study to evaluate the need for and the feasibility of a daytime duty crew for Bethel, East Bethel, Linwood, Oak Grove, and St. Francis fire departments. The study was completed by Fire Services Consulting and paid for by a grant from the State Fire Marshal's Office. The study was the first to specifically analyze the needs for a full-time shared duty crew to serve these municipalities. All the departments involved in the study agreed that there would eventually be a demand for a fully staffed daytime duty crew, but none had reached that threshold as of May 2019. The following trends and events have occurred over the past 3.5 years that have brought us to the point where we need to reassess those needs. It's the increased reliance on fire departments for non-fire services, employment demographics related to work schedules, and the increasing difficulty of recruitment and retention of volunteer firefighters. With the retirement of Deputy Chief Anderson and the increase of calls for the service, we are reaching the point where the availability of day responders are to the point that our personnel resources do not always meet the needs for the service of these calls. As a result, some day responses are sent out with understaffed crews, and/or our 2 full-time employees are having to spend more time as responders with a corresponding decrease in their ability to handle their other daily duties. This situation shows no signs of changing as calls are increasing and the number of volunteer responders are decreasing. The daytime responder calls for the past 5 years are listed in your staff report. They've increased from 229 calls in 2018 to 298 calls as of 11/29/2022. That's projected to be about 325 for this year, or up almost 100 over the 5-year period. Approval of this position would create a modified duty crew that would relieve many of the pressures of the day response from department volunteer personnel and provide this service at a fully staffed level. In addition to the fire chief and fire inspector, an additional full-time employee would enable responses to most of the calls during the 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday through Friday period by these employees. This would reduce the need of a day volunteer responder personnel and postpone the creation or consideration of the creation of a full-time or shared services duty crew to cover these calls. This position would also have other duties as outlined in the attached job description in your packet. The annual cost for the position is estimated to be $80,000. If there is a direction to continue discussion of this proposal, staff will begin the review of options for the funding of this position within the 2023 budget for the second half of the year. Beyond 2023, costs for the position could be provided by a SAFER grant for a 2 to 4 year interim period, and then by rental inspection fees and increased tax revenues generated by a development project within the city's water and sewer district. The focus of this work meeting is to review previous discussions of a full-time duty crew, analyze our current needs, and seek direction from council as to the next step to address this concern. I would like to say that 2019 study was done by participation with all those 6 localities mentioned. All expressed some sort of interest in it. I think St. Francis at the time decided they weren't. We all recognized that need is going to exist someday, but at that time, we weren't to that point. I don't know that we're at that point of a full-time shared duty crew. I think there'd be lots of problems with administering that. Doing it this way would, based on the information in your packet, would be about a $40,000 cheaper way to do this and have full service for our day responders Monday through Friday, 8 to 4 p.m. So I have Fire Chief Sano with us tonight who can answer additional questions regarding this, and I think he has some additional data to provide. Again, this is just a type of a presentation to brief council on what we'd like to explore going forward and see if this is a viable consideration for the future. Rod?
Evening, Chief.
Good evening. And I'm here to answer any questions you guys have on this or provide additional information.
How many firefighters do we have designated as daytime or considered daytime?
We have, as of right now, 6 people designated as a daytime firefighters.
Do they work around the city too, or is it?
Most of them are at home sleeping. They work nights.
Oh, they work nights, okay.
Yes.
Okay. And this will sound like an unfair question. Do we have any problem with people waking up and not responding, or?
As of right now, in 2019, our call per person, or daytime call, was at 6.6 people per call. As of today, we're down to 4.81 people per call.
Yeah.
That's including the 2 full-time people and Chief Anderson. And in 2019, we had Chief Ducharme was the only full-time person at that time.
Right.
So yes, we are getting less and less response.
I wish we had the graphic at, Saturday night, they had the firefighter appreciation dinner for the trustees.
Yes, I do.
And there was a graph that was presented that it was meant as a joke towards Artie, but talked about how many calls that we had
Yeah,
this year and how
Chief Anderson has actually responded to about 550 850 calls this year now.
Out of 750 calls?
Out of 850,
That's crazy.
Yeah.
yes.
I mean,
And
that's more than a full-time firefighter would have, so. when you think
Yes,
about
it is.
Cause throughout the day, you know, it's.
Yep.
So, where do we wanna go with this? Discussion-wise?
To see if this is a viable option, or should we move forward with it, not move forward? Is this the kind of information that, you're requesting?
I think so. Like I said, this is kind of a presentation to just brief everyone here on the potential need. And I recognize that this will be an issue that will be decided probably in February or March of next year. I did invite our other two to-be new council members to be present. We sent them copies of the packet. Mr. Smith's out of town and couldn't be available, so I'll reach out to them to see if they have any questions, but I think it's a need we need to address. Maybe the evaluation will show we don't need it at this time, but I think it's something we need to start looking into now, because at some point it's gonna become more critical than it is today.
Rodney, has there been any discussion amongst the surrounding communities of that, doing that evaluation again?
No, there has not. Rob, or the chief of Oak Grove, and I have discussed, we know this may be coming sometime soon, where we're gonna have to look at maybe shared services again. And that, because every department is in the same boat we're in. Everyone is.
I thought Oak Grove went to a duty crew.
They do a modified duty crew.
Is that what it is? Okay,
Yes.
okay.
And that,
Cause I think, if I remember right from that discussion, one of our concerns is if we do this, we're gonna end up funding most of it
Well,
and,
yeah.
cause they've
Yeah.
stationed out of our station and everything, so why wouldn't we just do our own
That-
daytime, so.
And-
Exactly.
And that's the point in it too, and there's also be a lot of administrative headaches. And in this proposal, this is a graph taken from that study. It shows that for a 2 full-time duty crew, that the city of East Bethel's cost in 2019 was estimated to be $121,000. Now, under this proposal too, the city of East Bethel would have had to bought the duty truck, and we would charge back our time and mileage to those responders out of city that we administered the service to. But I think this is a better opportunity, at least for now, to look at providing this service at a much cheaper cost and not have the administrative headaches.
What, has there been any thought of doing something similar like this with Ham Lake? 'Cause it seems to me that just from the years of watching the calls and the departments, there seems to be more, I don't know what the word would be, but balance between Ham Lake and East Bethel, the same type of calls. You know, they're less rural than, you know, than we are, but, you know, we're less rural than Oak Grove and now than in Linwood, so.
I have not reached out to Ham Lake's chief yet to discuss anything like this with them.
Does Ham Lake respond to all emergency service calls?
As of right now, Ham Lake does not respond to, they have certain criterias
Okay, so
the call
we'd
has
be-
to meet.
we'd be essentially supplying different services within Ham Lake.
Yes, Ham Lake will go to major medicals, and that, but by watching, active or non-active 911 mobile CAD, I have Ham Lake pulled up on the mobile CAD where if they get a call, it comes out, where the fire department may not get called out, and they respond to just as many of these calls as we do if they were getting paged out on every call. They'd be at the same number we're at. Because as Reich said, as of right now, they do not respond to they only respond to major medicals, which are heart attacks and that.
Yeah, if it's life or death, yeah.
Well, we may be having that discussion soon too, considering the fact that Artie's leaving. I mean, it's not that Artie can be replaced, but because he is such a high percentage of everything, it's gonna go to zero. And there's no person to replace him right away, you know, we may have to triage our calls too at some point in order to manage the response, so.
Yeah, we may have to look at that, but I'm hesitant to be the one to make that call on what calls we go to and which ones we don't.
Right.
We have been paged out on lift assists before, and it has turned into a cardiac arrest.
Yep.
So on a lift assist, we would not get paged out. The deputies would get paged, and we're already behind the 8 ball to say, on getting that person help. If we were to triage our calls, because the calls are triaged based on the information the caller is given.
Right.
Given the people at the dispatch center.
So where does staff wanna go with this?
Well, we would like to explore this and look into the economics of it a little bit more. Give another presentation to council, probably the first work meeting in February. And then we can make a decision on really if we want to proceed further on this, what's the timing of it, or if it's something we just need to put on the shelf for a while and address it at a later date.
Well, I would like to see it explored, not just for having another day crew, but the shared responsibilities or additional responsibilities of this position would be a community outreach coordinator, which includes recruiting. So, I'm not sure of your recruiting standards right now, but is there essentially a full-time position dedicated to recruiting, or do you just have specific events or take walk-ins? I don't know how you do it. Would this position help recruit?
As of right now, we are, like I said, we do have a recruiting event. We just tried one earlier this year to have people come down, and I think we got 2 or 3 people, 4 maybe, that show up. But basically, it's word of mouth right now. Our last 2 hirees were word of mouth, and that we'd like to do more recruiting, but as everybody knows, if you go out there and you keep hitting more and more people, and it's over and over and over, eventually people will just get used to seeing the signs and say, it's just another sign. So we're gonna try to recruit about every 6 months, do some kind of event to get a recruitment out there and see who we can get. And that would coincide with either us having an academy for our firefighters or getting them into the Anoka County Fire Academy. And that.
And as you could see in the position description, which is still in the works and will probably be modified, but should this position be created, it wouldn't be just sitting around waiting for daytime responder calls. There would be a number of other numerous duties that would be assigned to this task, many of them which are done by Chief Anderson at the time now. So it would kind of be replacing some of his efforts, and they would still be available for the critical period of time we have for responders, that Monday through Friday, 8 to 4 p.m. time.
Would you think that a person dedicated to recruiting would help bring in numbers? Because I believe that you said you're down about 8 right now, and with some retirees, it might be down about 10.
I think it probably would help bringing in the numbers and that, but, you know, our city size is what, about 14,000 people right now? 12 to 14,000, I think.
12.
And we got 28 members. So it's, you know, this is not a very easy job to recruit for.
No.
Because
What
of
is the primary obstacle? If you could put your finger on one thing,
the time commitment,
just the lack of time, huh?
the time commitment.
Yeah.
You are,
Or the off time, that it's during a day. Is that it?
yeah.
Maybe if
well-
I shut up and let you answer, you could get it out.
Yeah. Well, the obstacle for recruitment is what you're asking, Councilman?
Just what, yeah, what is the primary obstacle in recruiting people?
It's basically the time commitment.
Yeah,
And that, because just to get to where we can put you on a truck and respond to calls, your firefighter 1, 2, and hazmat is just about 200 hours of classroom.
yeah.
And if you are gonna be an EMR, which is a basic medical, that's 40 hours of classroom. And then we basically train every Monday night is, when we hire the people, we basically tell them, your Monday nights are ours. Or Mondays, it's either during the day or night. So that's a lot of time, to put in. Plus they have to respond to their calls, they have to do 30% of their calls during their shift and that. So you're asking for a lot of time to be given up for this, you know. Yes, it is a paid on-call job. We don't pay a lot, so it's more of a volunteer call. So you're asking people to volunteer a lot of time. And that.
Has there been an evaluation, and maybe this, again, I'm relatively new, very new, so I'm not as hip to the terms, but as a full-time or full employment type staff, is that what you call a full-time duty crew? People are just paid to be fire people as opposed to volunteers? Am I understanding the terms correctly?
Yes, there is most cities now are going to duty crews. I do believe, Eden Prairie just came up where they're going to duty crews.
And that's just a full-time job?
It's a paid, that's a part-time job.
It's a part-time job?
The full-time job would be like, Coon Rapids would be a full-time job,
Right.
where they don't run duty crews. They run their full-time people.
And we're not at the point with 12,000 people, or even involving, if we involved Ham Lake and Bethel and whatever, we're not at the point where we can justify that kind of approach. We need to rely on the volunteer.
No, we're not
Fire
at that
crews.
point yet.
Okay, thank you.
Even the bigger suburbs are still volunteer for most
Yeah,
part.
Bloomington is the biggest department
Wow.
that is a paid on-call department. And there was an article in the paper a month ago, Councilman Harrington, that he is down 50 firefighters. They're used to having 150 firefighters. They were at 99.
Wow.
So yeah, it's not just an East Bethel thing. It's all over this country.
Well, it definitely seems to need our attention, and sooner rather than later,
Yes, it
unless
does.
I'm missing something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've been talking about this for a few years.
Yeah.
I think for as long as I've been involved, we've had issues with daytime.
Yes.
Getting daytime, and it's tough, especially out here.
You know, and when we split the city in half for nighttime, where Station 1, Station 2, Station 3, Station 1 and 3 respond together, when we split that in half, that did help our responders.
Yeah.
Cause it basically cut the number of calls that you're responsible to go to in half. You know, our daytime responders right now, their shifts, not only it's from 5 a.m. Monday, or 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, they also are responsible to respond on weekends also. So that adds more calls, so our daytime responders are actually responsible to responding to over half the calls. Where our nighttime responders get about a third of the calls. So I'm just trying to avoid burning out my daytime responders.
Yeah. Well, that's a realistic concern.
Well, that and taken away from the duties that between you and fire inspector have. You know,
Yes.
It's, all right. Anything else? Okay.
Okay, well,
Rodney, I expect you'll be here again.
I will be here again, yes. on that.
This is, it's a big deal, so.
Okay, well, thank you, guys.
All right, thanks,
Thank you,
chief.
Rob.
Have a good night.
Have a good night. Okay, the Sunrise River Water Management Organization 2024 budget funding formula.
Thank you, Steve. The Sunrise River WMO conducted meetings on October 4th and 19th, 2022, with city administrators and city member liaisons from each member municipality to discuss amendment to the Joint Powers Agreement and a new funding formula for assigning costs to the members. These meetings did not produce any agreement on a consensus for a funding formula that would be acceptable to all the municipalities. The major issue is the method of cost assignment that assigns a percentage of non-operation expenses apportioned to each city. Currently, non-operating expenses are apportioned to the amount of a member's land area and market value within their portion of the watershed, and administrative and operating costs are split equally among the members. The current formula for figuring the non-operating costs is the acreage of the city in the watershed divided by the total acreage of the watershed plus the market value of parcels in the city in the watershed divided by market values of all parcels in the watershed divided by 2 equals the percent of non-operating costs. Now it's a little, takes a little time to figure that out, but currently that's the formula for funding that has been operating in the Sunrise River WMO since its inception in 1985. Now, we first started hearing some rumblings from Ham Lake in 2016 and actually had some meetings on it then in 2019, where Ham Lake wanted to assign all the operating cost as non-operating cost, not differentiate between the two because of their small land size within the watershed. I think they've got about 2 square miles, but they have close to 100 homes on Coon Lake. Columbus has expressed some concerns over this recently because of their large acreage of Carlos Avery management acreage. To address the concerns of Ham Lake and Columbus, there were several proposals evaluated to see if these could be adjusted. At our meetings on the 4th and the 19th, and of these, there was only one that was considered favorable for consideration over the current method of assessing these costs. And that proposal to determine the cost assessment was based on private acres and public rivers and lakes acreage, with the same formula and divided by 2 to determine the operating cost, non-operating cost. Under this proposal, operating and operating costs were not differentiated. There would be a minimum contribution required by each municipality, and the remaining costs would be split by the calculated percentage of the formula. East Bethel's percentage for 2024 under this proposal would be 29.13% for their share of the operating costs for the JPA. We did have another meeting this past week because we've kind of reached a little bit of an impasse in determining this formula. And there were 2 recommendations or requests made by Ham Lake and Columbus to reconsider an option called 4A, which is shown here. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, this is 4A here. Oh, I'm sorry, it's 1A. So under option 1A, there would be, all the costs would be lumped together and figured by this formula. Based on that cost, the cost for the city of East Bethel and Linwood would increase. Cost for Ham Lake and Columbus would decrease. Ham Lake has been insistent that they don't want to pay any more than about $3,000. I don't think their argument is based on realities, but more on what they've given direction to from their city council. The city of Columbus, I think, is willing to be negotiable on this. So there was another option that came up, was called option 4C, which would essentially possibly reduce our cost some. It would increase Ham Lakes, decrease Linwood's, and keep Columbus's costs fairly close to what they are. Ham Lake has said if they don't get some type of an agreement on this, they're gonna try to opt out of the Sunrise River WMO. When we discussed this at the work meeting back in November, staff and city council liaison were directed to go back to Sunrise River WMO and say we would be acceptable to continue the current formula, or even look at 4B, which keeps our cost essentially the same or potentially just a little bit lower. 4C would do the same thing. The only thing it would do, it would increase Ham Lake's cost, which Columbus was in favor of and Linwood was in favor of. Linwood was more in favor of this because it does increase the minimum contribution required by each city, which addresses that issue of operating costs. So Tim and I have had one in-person meeting, 2 Zoom meetings, and we have a meeting scheduled for tomorrow night to see if we can come to some resolution on this cost formula for the operation of the Water Management Organization. It appears that Ham Lake is being pretty set on not increasing their costs, but decreasing them significantly, even at the expense of others. We pointed out that we were willing to look at things, but we weren't going to increase our costs so somebody else could have a lesser cost. So we're just wanting to know if you want us to go ahead and endorse 4C, which actually decreases our potential cost by about $300 a year.
Could you tell me
Addresses-
which is 4C? I've got the thing downloaded in front of me and I
We
don't
don't
see
have
it.
it.
Yeah, we got it.
What
He
is it,
must-
what is it
That's
again?
right there.
We
It's
just,
right
we
there.
just got this today.
We just got it today, this afternoon. so-
4C is
Wasn't
this
our
one
packet.
on the bottom here, Kevin.
Is that just private lands or is that,
This is determined by the
Do I need
ratio
to
of
read it, maybe?
private, you want to see if I can blow that up just a little bit? So this would be Columbus, East Bethel, Ham Lake, and Linwood. So this goes and does away with the current formula of land area within the watershed and market value and puts it back to private land area and public waters within the market area. To determine the non-operating cost, does away with operating costs, but requires a minimum contribution from each city. In this example of $2,233 based on an average of the last 5 years' cost to the SRWMO. So these costs can vary from year to year, but they keep in line with what we're paying now. So this option 4C, in addition to the ones we approved at the meeting in November, would still keep our costs essentially the same. Our proposed budget for 2023 is $12,647. That's already been approved, so you can see under this scenario, our cost would be about $300 a year less.
Jack, do you know what Ham Lake's budget is, roughly?
For their Sunrise River,
No, for their entire city budget.
I'd have to look. I think it's just a little less than ours, but I'm not sure how much.
So call it 5.5 million,
Well, you'll call it between five and six, somewhere along in there.
and they wanna knock 2,000 off their bill?
Yeah,
Well-
or even less than that.
Well, what they're saying is they're not doing anything on on the Ham Lake end of the lake there, the 110 homes, that there's no projects going on there. Well, any project you do on Coon, benefits the whole lake, but they don't consider that, they're not considering that.
For Sunrise, have they had any representation there?
No, they've got 2 residents on there, and we've tried to get a council person on there, and
But they have residents though?
2 residents, yeah.
That are representatives?
Yes,
So they
yes.
have representatives?
Yeah, they
Okay,
report,
okay.
they go to the council meeting, yeah.
Well, that's fine, I mean, that's what we had for years too.
Oh.
We had representative too, so. And so Ham Lakes, is there a scenario Ham Lake prefers? Is it 1A?
Yes, it's the one that reduces their cost to about
So like
$1,800.
what Brian said,
Yeah.
all this is, and Ham Lake's driving this thing, right?
Yep.
Correct,
And so they're just concerned about $2,600 a year.
yeah.
I'm gonna say what I said the previous 4 times we talked about this. I have no interest in changing this, so.
And the
I mean,
reason,
and all these other scenarios are just arbitrary anyway, then, so, I mean, we had a basis to start this when they did the JPA. What's wrong with that basis, so?
well, that's the standpoint that the city of East Bethel and Linwood have taken. You know, we've had this formula in place for
Yeah,
37
I mean,
years.
we host
Yeah.
meetings for 20 years.
Yep.
We do all administration, and Ham Lake doesn't do anything, so.
Should we put some responsibility on Ham Lake?
Well,
If they
and,
wanna do something?
you know, we made the statement in the meeting we had at the city of Columbus on October the 19th that the city of East Bethel was not interested in increasing their costs so another city could lower their cost, is essentially what it
Well,
was.
it's not even, like I said, these scenarios are so arbitrary, it's like, who pays what?
Yeah.
No, it's about, what's the basis for selecting the formula? It's not what the results of the formula, we should know what the results are.
Well,
What's the basis for the formula, and then the numbers are what they are, so.
When I came here tonight, haven't looked at this in some detail, which is why I need to talk to you, because I downloaded this at about 2 o'clock today, and I didn't have the right elevage stuff, and I didn't have this either, this thing either, so apparently I need to download it at a different time or something.
well, and again, this wasn't sent out in the packet because everything was in here except this option 4C.
Right.
And
yeah.
I thought it'd be just as easy to explain this, that there
Which
is
is-
another
yeah.
option.
Which
rather
is
than
fine. When I came here tonight, I wrote down, to me, the variation 4A seemed
Yep.
the most equitable, most reasonable. As far as private acreage, because Columbus has so much, you're basing it on land, well, a lot of the land isn't their land anyway. But but again, I take Steve's point of, it's just, you're talking about majoring in the minor things here, you know, you're not
Yeah.
talking about a lot of dollars. And I
And-
didn't even know about the.
Yeah, this has gotta be the 4th
Yeah.
time we've had this
I didn't even
discussion,
know about
so.
the administrative burden that
Yeah.
we have that Ham Lake doesn't have. I
Well,
mean,
and actually, we volunteered for that. I mean, they said, will you
well,
do
yeah,
this?
but we're
So-
still doing it.
Yeah, we
you know.
still do it. But
It just
no,
seems
no,
like
no
they're-
matter which way you do it, the costs are essentially the same, and it's,
Yeah.
we have one locality that's quibbling just really over a few dollars.
How about if we threaten to do a hostile takeover of the 125 homes on
Well,
Cook?
that's what we, yeah,
Maybe
that's what we said.
It's
We
called
brought
the
that
ante
up.
a little.
Annexation.
Yeah, up the
Annexation,
ante a little,
Yeah.
I'm saying, they like that idea.
But, in our discussions at our last meeting, Ham Lake indicated that they had talked to Bowser and to the DNR, and that they could opt out of the Sunrise River WMO. But now Tim and I talked to Jamie, and Jamie says it's not possible.
Too much
And-
legal.
And if they did opt out, the first thing that would happen is the county takes it over. The county has, we talked to them in the past when this came up before, the county wants nothing to do with this.
Yeah.
They're hands-off, they don't wanna be bothered with it. So, according to Jamie, their possibilities of opting out are almost nil. And-
Do we ever talk to Brian Kirkham? Or people, isn't he the mayor?
Yeah, Kirkedy,
Kirkby.
Kirkham's a new mayor.
yeah.
Kirkham,
oh,
Brian
okay.
Kirkham. Yeah, do you know him, Steve?
No,
Have
I
you
don't.
ever- Or now
No, I don't
mayor-elect?
No, I just know their city council's stuck on a number and that's it. They don't wanna go over.
Well, and the other part of this too, for Kevin's background too, is they have the same argument for the Upper Rum water management, and their percentage is even
Smaller.
smaller. This is
Yeah.
I can see it in the upper room,
literally a
yeah.
little piece.
Right,
That one
right,
I
yeah.
feel for 'em.
I can see in the
Yeah,
upper
yeah.
room, but.
I
So
sympathize,
this is, they have the same
Yeah,
issue with
yeah.
both of
Right.
them.
yeah, I sympathize with them on the upper run,
Yes.
but on
Yeah,
this one,
that-
they
that's-
do
that's
get
harsh.
benefits.
Yes.
And
It's
like,
all based on
like
geographics.
Tim had said earlier, you know, their residents are eligible for all these grant programs like shore restoration, rain gardens on those properties that
Yeah.
abut Coon Lake, so they
Yeah.
have
I
access
mean,
to
that's,
those.
that's how you get the project. Somebody asks if we can do something,
Yep.
and why don't they, you know,
Yep.
have somebody in Ham Lake
Well,
if they.
and I thought they did one rain garden on the Ham Lake side. I thought they did.
I haven't heard anything, cause, their engineer said that nothing's been done.
South Coon, I know years ago they did something on South Coon too, so. But
Well, what do you guys recommend? You know more about the history than I do. I can express my opinion, but
it's council decision, so it's,
Oh,
again,
well,
I have no interest in changing this, so.
yeah,
Yeah, leave it like it is.
Their only basis is dollars.
Right.
It's-
hmm,
yeah.
You know,
seems
the only thing
nitpicky.
that I would add is, you know, is I'm not adverse to changing the formula. The question was, why is market value added into that original formula? It's probably based on ability to pay, you know, if one community has more resources than the other. But it only affects it slightly. It doesn't affect it that, there's not that much difference in market value between the four localities for those areas. Because we're talking about lakefront homes.
I thought the private ownership was much more important than the market value aspect of it, because
Yeah.
Columbus in particular is,
And that's why they wanted to take a look. Let's see what it does
Yeah.
if we use
Right.
private lands in relation to the amount of water available.
yeah,
It changes it a little bit, but for us, it changes it for the better.
yeah.
So,
Well, what was, our recommendation from last time? Was that
stay with the same
Stay the same
formula or go to 4B.
4B?
Mm-hmm.
Well, stay with that. Yeah, we either stay the same, or if they wanna change it, that's their choice. They can have 4B if they want it.
Ham Lake, you ain't gonna do that, not for $500.
No.
That's what I mean, it's, everyone's gonna shout if their cost goes up,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So. And Linwood, I mean, if, you know, look at, just anecdotally,
Oh,
I'd say the
yeah.
majority of the
Yep.
projects
Yeah.
have been in
Yeah.
Linwood, but that's because they have
The most
more
water.
of the lakes and more
Yep,
of the
45%, yeah.
issues. But all these other communities benefit from that too,
Yes.
so.
And you know, the common denominator for this for three of the cities is Coon Lake. But anything that benefits Coon Lake, whether the project is actually in Linwood, East Bethel, or Ham Lake, benefits everybody that lives on the lake and benefits the users of the lake.
Yep. All right. We should just put this on our agenda once a year, so. It always comes up. And that completes our agenda for tonight.
Make a motion adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made in second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes. Our meeting's adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you, short timer.
What's an error